Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 6 of Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, because we talk about other video game companies as well, although probably not much today. And by we, I mean just me, because I, George, the Ginger Ninja, am your solo host, because I am solo out of ideas for this podcast. The volume of ideas I have is so low, but I'm also so low as the host of this podcast. Maybe I'll have someone on at some point in the future. So hello everybody. Today is March 26th. When you're seeing this, 26th, is that right? Yeah, 26th. It's March 26th, and that means one thing and one thing only. It's Wednesday. But it means another thing and another thing only, and that's that there's 7 days until the Switch 2 presentation. So that is very exciting, and, as it turns out, there's 7 days in a week. I know, newfangled concept, right? 7 days in a week, and the show is weekly, which means it comes out every 7 days, and if there's 7 days to the Switch 2 presentation, that means that there's an episode that's supposed to come out on the day of the presentation. But here's the problem. Here's the dilemma that I've run into, all right? Here's the issue, you could say. So, I have school. I'm a school goer. I go to school, there's this thing, it's called School New Idea, right? So, turns out the presentation will happen while I'm at school. Unfortunately, Nintendo, I called them up. I was like, hey, Furukawa, buddy, listen here. I've got school. Can you move the presentation to 7 o'clock, I don't know, 5 o'clock, it doesn't matter, anytime, right? Maybe move it to 5 in the morning. Unfortunately, Furukawa was like, nah, we're good. So, he did not plan around my school. So, unfortunately, that means that I will not be able to, have a Switch to presentation episode out very quickly. In fact, I might not even be able to get it out on Wednesday. So, here's what I've decided to do. Because originally my plan was I was going to have a normal episode not talking about the Switch 2 on Wednesday. Maybe put it out a little earlier in the day so it's not as irrelevant. And then put out an additional, a bonus episode the next day on Thursday talking about the Switch 2 presentation, which still was going to be a bit difficult to, get that all together. But here's what I've decided instead. I'm going to just delay the episode a day. So episode 7 of Not Just Nintendo is going to come out on Thursday, April 3rd, instead of on April 2nd. So it's going to come out a day later than normal. And of course, the reason I'm doing that is just to align with the presentation. Because it seems ridiculous and stupid to make an hour and a half episode not talking about the biggest news we've gotten from Nintendo since, January 2017, I guess, probably, right? It would be pretty stupid for me to make a video, or a podcast episode, and not talk about the biggest thing in the news. And it's only one day. If it was the presentation was on a Sunday or a Saturday, I would maybe just put out the video and then, have an additional video. But because they align on the same day, I'm only going to have to move the episode one day. So I think it makes the most sense this way. So that's what's going to happen. You won't hear from me for 8 days instead of 7 days. I know, this is probably horrifying news. Everybody's probably very sad that you won't get to hear my beautiful voice a day earlier than you would, or, at the same time you normally would each week. So it'll probably still be 5 p.m. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to get it out earlier in the day. I guess if I manage to finish it there on Wednesday night, I might just schedule it for the morning so that I get it out as fast as possible, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I don't know. Maybe I'll wait till noon or something. Maybe I'll wait till noon. We'll say noon. So that way, it's still out if you want to see it. So it'll be out sometime on Thursday, unless I get hit with a meteor or there's some horrible tragedy. I don't know. Well, if I get hit with a meteor, I guess that the podcast is a little short-lived, right? But anyways, so that's the plan. Not going to have an episode on Wednesday. The episode is going to be on Thursday instead. I guess I'll probably make a community post about that on YouTube. I would say I'd do something on Spotify, but nobody watches there anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So I'll put out a little community post about that. I'll update the Discord. And by the way, you can join the Discord in the description. It's one of the links. I don't know. It's down there somewhere. I don't know. You'll find it. It's got discord.gg in the URL. So And also, I guess while I'm plugging things, I'll say that you can email the show with any questions, any comments, anything. You can do any of that stuff. I guess it'd be kind of difficult to ask questions for next week because there's the presentation next week and nothing's going to be relevant. So I don't know. Maybe wait till next week and then email. But I guess if you want to ask a completely unrelated question, you can do that. And the email address is notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO @gmail.com. So you can email that email. I know, newfangled concept. And you can ask questions. You can do whatever you want. I will. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'll respond to that in the next episode or the one after. I don't know. Whenever I decide to. But I haven't got any email yet. So we're still waiting. You can also, if you're on YouTube, you can just comment. That's far easier. And I'll see it just as quickly. So actually, probably quicker. So that's probably a better strategy. And if you're on Spotify, you can comment there as well. I know there's not hardly anybody on Spotify watching this, but that's okay. You can, if you are there, say hello, and also just leave a comment over there. You don't have to email, but if you want to email, you can still email if that's your thing. So that was a long little gap about next week, but I think it is important to outline what's going to happen next week because honestly, this episode, I mean, this is like filler until next week. Next week, I mean, it just so happens there's another Wednesday in between now and the presentation, so it's like, okay, I guess I got to make a video or a podcast episode. But really, at the end of the day, if I was just making these not at a scheduled time, I'd probably just wouldn't even bother. I'd just wait until the presentation, but that's okay. The presentation. I'm very hyped. I mean, I've been talking about it nonstop. Anybody that knows me in real life, if you're watching this, you'll know. I've been telling everybody, again, given the countdown, ever since that direct, or not direct, like the announcement trailer back was that in February or is that still in January? I don't even know anymore. It's hard to say. But yes, I've been giving the countdown, like, hey, there's, you know, 27 days until the Switch 2 presentation, and it's gotten down to 9 as of the day I'm recording this. And when you're seeing this, it'll be 7 days. Oh, January. It was January. It'll be 7 days when you're seeing this. So it's crazy. We're almost there. We're almost there. Now that said, the Switch 2, right? I kind of wish Nintendo had done something new. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I wish Nintendo had done something new because Nintendo, they are the innovators in the industry. They are always the ones who are innovating, who are, coming up with new ideas. A lot of people copy them. A lot of people, take what they did. And I'm not always saying it's like their fault. I'm not like casting blame and stuff. I'm just saying, or even, I'm not even casting like shade or anything. I'm just saying I'm just saying the fact. Nintendo is the innovator of the industry. And right now, I'd say they're probably leading the industry as well. They're definitely doing the best. And I think what they do is going to largely dictate what other companies in the space do. So I think that's the kind of interesting situation where we're at. Of course, the leader of the industry kind of changes around a little bit. I'd say it's not really ever Xbox, but sometimes it's PlayStation, sometimes it's Nintendo. I would say Nintendo is always the one that has the most impact, probably because like I said, what they do is probably going to have the largest impact. But you can't discount PlayStation. Oftentimes they're selling much better, so of course they're still going to have large impact. I would say Xbox probably has the least impact, but they definitely do still have large impact across the industry. So in the last week, I have beat a video game, but I'm not gonna really talk about it much. I beat Super Mario Brothers. I know, crazy, right? But this isn't anything new. I've beat it before, and so for the end of the year thing, like this will count as a game I beat this year, the first time. If I beat it again this year, it won't count again. But it'll count as a game I beat this year, but it won't count as a new game for like my ranking at the end of the year. At the end of the year, I'll rank anything I've played for the first time this year. I won't rank Mario Brothers on there. If I was going to count that kind of stuff, Super Mario 64 would be the top of my list literally every single year because I play it every year and it's my favorite game every year. So, that would be a lame list. So I only count the new stuff, but it will go on the list. I put a little star. I have my little physical little list here by my desk. And I write down the release, not the release date, the date of completion and the time of completion, like not the time, but like the amount of time I spent, and the title of the game, and then I write a little star if it's my first time beating it, or if I 100% it and I write 100%, and then I write a star if it's my first time 100%ing, right? So that's how I do it. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best way, but it's the way I do it, so don't judge. All right, so what are we going to talk about this week? That's a good question because honestly, I don't have a whole lot to talk about. So I'll maybe talk about a little bit of news that's happening and maybe what I've been up to in the last week. I mentioned earlier that I say earlier, I just literally mentioned the only game I beat in the last week was Super Mario Brothers. I did that on live stream. If you're here on YouTube, which I think is about everybody, you could watch my live streams. Maybe I shouldn't be plugging my live streams because I've got to be like the least consistent live streamer on the entire platform. I mean, I live streamed yesterday as of when I'm recording this on Sunday. And before that, the last time I had live stream was like a month and a half ago. So, I'm not very consistent. I'm hoping to be consistent again here soon. But, I've been making myself busy. I haven't been playing as many games in the last week. That's why I haven't beat anything in a couple weeks, really. Since, like, Once Upon a Jester and Super Metroid. I haven't really beat anything. There's a few reasons for that. I've been playing some longer stuff. But also, I've been playing less because I've been filing my video game collection. I used to have this spreadsheet that had everything on it, and then it got deleted. And so I'm making a new spreadsheet, and it's got for each system, it's a Google Sheets document. They're separated out by system, and so I'll have like NES games, right? And then I'll make like 7 or 8 rows or whatever, and I'll put in each row, I'll put like the title, the release year, whether I have it loose, in box, Game Plus manual, or complete or new. And then I'll go put the developer, put the publisher, and where I found it, if I remember, how much I found it for, if I remember. I have a little section for notes, like if there's anything, about it that I want to track. Um, and then there's the year I got it in, if I remember. So I have all those little categories. And I've been doing this for every game in my collection. And at the end, I'm going to count them all up. I have somewhere between 500 and 600. I think it's somewhere between 550 and 600. I don't know the exact number, but I'll probably be hitting 600 this year or next year, which will be exciting for sure. I don't have like a ton, but I'd say 600 is quite a few, right? It's a pretty good number to have. I think it's fairly respectable. So yeah, I've been going through the list. I'm actually almost done. I'll probably be done, or I should definitely be done by next week. I don't know if I'll have any of this like preamble next week on the podcast. I might just hop right in, introduce it, plug the email, and then just get right into talking about the presentation. If I had to guess, I would say the next episode is probably going to be longer than most because I'll probably be yapping for, honestly, maybe even a few hours because I'll probably have a lot of stuff to say about the Switch 2. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. But yes, I've been working on the collection. I've been working on some housework, that kind of stuff. Been doing a lot of stuff in my room, cleaning some stuff, organizing a lot of things. Part of it is I want to get all my game controllers and accessories organized because I'm planning to do this collection tour in July. And yeah, sure, it's only March, but I figure, I don't have marching band or anything right now, so I should probably be working on that right now. And to be fair, it would be nice to know where my stuff is. I mean, I think I have a pretty good idea of most things, but and I've been cleaning up and I've been finding things that I have been missing forever. Like I have these pair of Raycon everyday headphones. I had the everyday earbuds. These are the things that a lot of like YouTubers and stuff will have sponsors for. You see it all the time. It's like the Raycon everyday earbuds, right? I had the everyday earbuds, and then I didn't use them that much because I just don't like earbuds very much. But I got the everyday headphones instead a couple years ago, and those things are great. They're fantastic. Love those headphones. Like amazing headphones. The only problem is I lose them like constantly. Like literally all the time. Like it's crazy. Especially lately, like in the last 6 months or so, I think I've lost them probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. Like it's at least once a month. And they're gone for days, usually at least. I mean, I say lose for more than a day, 5 or 6 times. Maybe I'll lose them and I'll find them an hour later or something. But generally, I lose them for a very long time. In fact, it's my most recent time because I just found them 2 days, yesterday actually. Found them yesterday. But they had been missing since like early February or maybe even since January. I don't know. It's been like a long, long time, like 2 months we're talking. So I was very happy to find that. Yeah, I've been finding all sorts of cool stuff that I had been missing. So clean your room, I guess. I don't know. I mean, so I don't know. It's walkable and stuff. It's not like it's crazy out of order. It's just that I have nothing organized, So that was my problem. But now that I've been organizing, I've been finding things. It's quite nice. So basically, I've been keeping myself busy. Of course, the weather's getting nicer. There'll be yard work and stuff to do here soon, mowing the lawn, all that fun stuff. So I'm sure I'll keep myself busy this summer. I've also got marching band, but that doesn't start. I mean, we do the parade in May, and then we really start in like, I guess we don't really fully start till like August, so I guess it's not that bad, but we got some time. But yeah, I'll be playing a lot of games, making some podcast episodes. I want to get back to doing some YouTube stuff. That's probably what I'm gonna do in the next week or so, for the most part, if I had to guess. I'm gonna start this Animal Crossing 100 Days thing maybe tomorrow. I mean, I'm kind of delaying it. I don't want to start it, but the thing is, I got to tell myself the later I start it, the later it's gonna come out. Like if I start it today or if I start it tomorrow, like, I think it can come out like end of July, probably like maybe beginning of August, maybe. Um, is that right? I don't know, because it's a little over 3 months. So yeah, if I started it like tomorrow, I would be done with 100 days in theory on June 25th. I could get that edited for July sometime. If I wait a few weeks, it might not come out till August. So I need to kind of not. I need to stop delaying. Is really what I need to do. I need to stop procrastinating, putting it off. Um, so, although I don't know, I might do multiple days in some days. Like I don't actually want to spend a full 100 days making this video. I think it would probably be better is if like on non-school days I do 2 days, and during the summer I do 2 days. To get it done faster. I mean, I say during the summer. I guess it probably won't make it through. Like, it'll probably come out early on in the summer. Like, I'll probably not be out of school, or I'll just have gotten out of school, so there won't be much summer to do. But yeah, I'll probably do 2 days on days where I don't have school, and then maybe I can get it done in like 70 days or in maybe 65, instead of 100. So that would be nice. So I'm probably gonna start that here soon, and I want to make some video essays, some shorter ones. As well here pretty soon. I'll probably make a full separate YouTube video where I talk again about the Switch 2 presentation, if I had to guess. I don't know. Maybe, that's the thing. I'm almost like, do I make a little video or do I just save it for the podcast? Like I'm not really sure. So maybe I make videos where I talk about old games and then on the podcast I just yap because that's what I'm doing right now. I've been yapping for 18 minutes already. So I'm a little stuck. I haven't been uploading much. Maybe I will do Let's Plays again, but it definitely won't be the main thing, and they won't come out as frequently, because I figured out that's probably the problem with my Let's Plays. They weren't getting any views. I know Let's Plays aren't like the hottest thing around, but I would still expect them to get more views than they get, and I think the reason is because I don't leave them out for long enough before I make the next episode. When I do Let's Plays, I usually do it daily, which, to be honest, is a little stressful, depending on the thing. When I was doing, like, say, I don't know, Mario and Luigi Brothership, right? Those videos, they were like hour long or 45 minutes long, and they would take me like, I don't know, hour, 20 minutes, hour and a half to record, and then, like, I don't know, half an hour to an hour to edit. Not so bad, right? It's reasonable to do that every day, but it does get a little stressful. But like the Animal Crossing City Folk videos, those were like, 20 to 40 minutes, and those things I would spend a couple hours recording and then another hour, hour and a half editing. Like, it was crazy the amount of time I was spending on these videos. So, I was at a point where I was a little bit busier. I was playing more games and all this stuff. So it's just not a good idea. And the videos get less views when I put them out more frequently because, then I think really what it is people that don't watch the channel regularly, they'll click on the channel, every couple weeks or whatever, and then they watch the most recent video. It maybe if they're interested, right? If they might watch like the most recent video or maybe the second most, right? But if there's the most recent video changes every day, then none of them can really accumulate any sort of views. So I'm kind of just throwing away views by putting videos out too frequently, which is kind of weird that it would work that way, but I think it kind of does. So instead, if I do a Let's Play, I'll probably do like 2 a week or something. Is probably what I'll do. Unless I do 2 Let's Plays, both once a week. That could work as well. So maybe I'll start Let's Plays again, do video essays as well, and keep the podcast going, all while playing video games. Sounds like a lot of stuff to do, but I'm technically not too busy right now. It's just that I keep making myself busy at moments where I'm not. So, I don't know. Whatevs, right? Doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm going to do. So I will have new videos and stuff soon, and I'll start Let's Plays and stuff again. And then maybe I'll try to do some more live streaming and stuff. The thing is with live streaming is just I never know if I'm going to have like a long interrupted period. I think that's my biggest thing with the live streams. And then of course, I do some stuff after school. It's usually not a ton of stuff, but sometimes there's some things busy on like Wednesdays, busy on Mondays. So it does make it kind of difficult to do live streams. So that's why I haven't been doing very many. But I'd like to live stream things like Mario Party. That'd be fun, right? So I don't know. I'll probably be back to videos here soon. I would imagine April will be a pretty good month for the channel, but it's hard to say because I said that about March, and then we're almost out of March, and I still haven't made a video. So I don't know. I mean, to be fair, it's not like I'm completely absent. Like I'm still making the podcast. That's a weekly thing. I like to think that it's kind of high quality. Like it's not. I'm not Joe Rogan out here, but I think I'm doing all right. Um, just yapping. I think I have interesting things to talk about sometimes. Maybe not this week. This week's not great. To be honest, next week wasn't really that great either. But I think it's really because we're in a bit of a lull here. There's not a whole lot going on. I also haven't been playing all that many games, so when I play more games and when there's more news coming out, specifically next week, right, with the presentation, I think there'll be more to talk about on the podcast. I'm already like, maybe I shouldn't have done weekly, maybe I should have done bi-weekly, but I don't know. I think it's been working. If I do get to a point where I'm like, yeah, this just isn't working, like this is just, you know, I don't really know. Like maybe, there's nothing ever to talk about, or I'm getting stressed out. I've got other things going on. Maybe I will move it back to every other week instead of weekly. I think that will be good because I'll play more games and I'll have more to talk about. But it'll be bad if there's like a presentation or something, and then I have to like make a bonus episode anyways, and that's a whole thing, right? So I think there could be some problems here either way. And at the end of the day, I'm making half the content, and I don't really want to be making half the content. So I don't know. It's a hard decision, you know what I mean? So that's why I've been doing weekly. Um, it may move to bi-weekly at some point. But for right now, I think we're doing okay. I would guess if it moves to bi-weekly, it won't be till like next year. I don't know. Maybe the fall. The fall is probably the earliest it could become bi-weekly. Because I'm just gonna push through this until summer, and then in summer there'll be probably more stuff to talk about, and I'll have lots of things to play. I'll be playing a lot more games, so it won't be there till like fall. If I do have to push it to bi-weekly, it won't be till the fall when I do that. So don't be like too worried about it. It might not happen. It's just something I've been kind of thinking in my mind. I should say. I said that really quietly. Sorry. It was big news a few days ago. Yeah, I think it was a few. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, it was a couple days ago. For you, I guess it's like 5 now, 4 or 5 days ago. Xbox Game Pass, they're losing like tons of games, and it seems like I always am hearing that Xbox Game Pass is losing lots of games. Like, it seems like I don't know, twice a month or something. There's like at least 5 or 6 things, and then there's like 2 or 3 that come. Every time 5 or 6 games leave, 2 or 3 come. Sometimes even one comes. And I think this time they're losing what, like 10 or 11 games? Like seriously, it's a lot of games, and they're gaining like 2. So it's just one of those things. I always have had, not maybe not always, but especially in the last couple of years, I've had a pretty negative opinion of Xbox. Their build quality is garbage. The Xbox 360s, those things are known for breaking. The Red Ring of Death. Even the USB flash drive port covers, those fall off. You have all the ones with the disk drives getting stuck all the time. I mean, it happens sometimes with like PlayStations, but it's not nearly as often. The disk drive gets stuck all the time. Even the Xbox Series X, I've had my disk drive get stuck a couple times, and that one, it doesn't pull out. That one just literally just the disk won't come out. It gets stuck in there, and it's a whole thing. And then there's like network issues. My Xbox just will occasionally not want to connect to internet. Like it's a whole thing. The controllers don't pair very easily. Like honestly, a Wii remote pairs to a Wii more easily than an Xbox controller. Xbox Series X controller pairs to an Xbox Series X. And like Nintendo figured that out 20 years ago, almost. What is Xbox doing? Like it's crazy. Like their build quality sucks. Their online interface sucks. Lots of things suck. And I'm just really not happy with them. They're buying up studios, they're closing them down in the case of like Tango, and those studios have not been making games. It's crazy. Places like, I don't know, like Bethesda and stuff. They buy up Bethesda, all of a sudden Bethesda is like, a third of its output. Like it's crazy. Like there's no games coming out. They bought all these studios so they would have tons of games coming out, and then there's no games coming out. And it's absolutely insane. Meanwhile, the consoles are falling apart. and they're not working properly, or they'll do some update and then nobody can connect to the internet, or they do some update and the store is shut down, or they do an update and there's the live servers are down. Like, it's always something, and that stuff happens on PlayStation too. It doesn't really seem to happen on Nintendo very much. Now, you could say that it's because their online interface is less complicated, which, I mean, yeah, surely that's probably part of it, but at the same time, I mean, it's not breaking, right? So it might be less complicated, but it's not breaking. So I would rather an online interface that isn't quite as robust but doesn't frequently break than one that is very robust but breaks all the time. Like, I prefer the simplified method, even if there's some issues with it. And certainly, even if we're going to criticize Nintendo for the online interface stuff, surely PlayStation has to get the praise and not Xbox, because they have just as robust an online interface and theirs doesn't break nearly as often. So really, I think Xbox is the problem here. If you want to put some blame on Nintendo, if you want to put some blame on Sony, you can do so, but Xbox gets more blame for the same reasons that either of the other two would. So yeah, Xbox, they buy studios, they shut them down, they make no games, they break their consoles all the time, and they have horrible build quality. Like, I don't understand why anybody still likes them, and they're just as expensive. I mean, you could say the Series S is cheaper, obviously, right? That's pretty cheap. Um, but, like, the actual flagship one is way more expensive. And so, I think this Xbox Game Pass thing, I mean, clearly Xbox, they're pretty clear about the fact that they don't care if people buy their consoles. They don't care if their games come to other platforms. They actively push them out on other platforms, and they say it so that they can, like, be there for the gamer, right? You can play their games no matter where you are. But really, at the end of the day, it's because they're not making any money. They need more money. Their games don't make any money. Their consoles, they're selling at a loss. They don't make any games that they can sell. And the ones they do, they're forced to put out on other consoles because they're not making enough money. And so Xbox has clearly put all their eggs in one basket, and that basket is Xbox Game Pass. And now we've had steady price increases for Game Pass since it came out in 2017, and they've been removing games, at least in the last like year and a half. They've been removing games every week. It's like you lose 11, you get 1. You get 2. You lose 7, you get 2. You lose 6, you get 3. Like, never does it seem like they put more games than they take away. And so you're paying more for less stuff. And nobody's going to be happy about paying more money for less stuff. And I think it's one of those things. It doesn't seem sustainable. Xbox Game Pass, is that going to exist in 5 years? I don't know. I'm not convinced. I don't know. Maybe. It could, right? I mean, it's existed for 8, right? Why can't it exist for 5 more? Well, because it sucks now? So, I don't know. I'm not saying Xbox is going away, but Xbox might be going away. I mean, their consoles aren't selling. They're not making any games. They're closing down studios every now and then. And at the end of the day, I mean, they have all this money to throw around with Microsoft, right? I mean, Xbox is just a small, like, subsidiary. The brand is like a brand under Microsoft. So with a Nintendo, if Nintendo stops selling consoles and they stop selling games and they stop selling subscriptions, they're gonna go. They're gonna go under, right? It's not gonna work any longer. Whereas with Xbox, in theory, Microsoft, because they sell all the computers and they have all this other stuff, they could keep throwing money at the Xbox brand and just hoping that it is successful at some point, right? They have that advantage. But either way, the brand isn't successful. And at some point, the people at the top there, at the top of the corporate ladder at Microsoft, would have to be like, hey, look, this isn't working. You know what I mean? I mean, they're spending tons of money. They bought Activision Blizzard. They wasted like, I don't want to say they wasted, right? But they spent, what was it, like $80 billion? I mean, it was a crazy amount of money. Was it $80 billion? 69. Okay, so they spent $70 billion for Activision Blizzard, and now Activision Blizzard isn't making games. Call of Duty's losing players. It's so, it has so few players that they have to put it on Game Pass for anybody to play it. So clearly, that was not a good expense. And on the corporate ladder, they've got to be like, hey, look, we just bought Bethesda, we've bought all these other places. We bought Activision Blizzard for $70 billion. And now they're not making games, and their games aren't selling, and we're being forced to put the games on other platforms. Clearly, at some point, somebody high up has to be like, hey, look, this isn't working. And then what's going to happen? Well, either the brand's going to go away, studios are going to get sold, or studios are just going to get shut down. And so, if studios get sold, if like Bethesda gets sold to like Sony or Ubisoft or somebody, or, they just get released, I mean, that could be okay, right? But it's not okay for the Xbox brand. So the Xbox brand does not seem healthy, does not seem successful, and honestly, they haven't really been successful like ever. I mean, they came out, and I mean, sure, right? The original Xbox outsold the GameCube, outsold the Dreamcast, but at the end of the day, it sold like a seventh of the PS2. Then you got the Xbox 360, right? The Xbox 360 sold pretty well, but it didn't sell as good as the PS3. It doesn't sell as well as the Wii. It was still the loser of the generation, right? The Xbox One did notoriously bad. It got 50 million to the PS4's like 100 and what, like 120 or something. Obviously, it beat the Wii U, but that's not much of an accomplishment. And now, where we're at right now, we've got the PS5 at like 75 million. We've got the Switch at like 150, 155 or something like that. I mean, it's getting up there. It's like 152. And meanwhile, the Xbox is sitting here with like 30 million. And so it's like barely, or maybe it's at like 25, I don't know. It's barely outsold the original Xbox, that's for sure. And so if over the course of 20 years, when more people exist and video games become a larger hobby that are available in more places in the world, there's no reason why a console should not be selling better than a console from 20 years ago from the same company. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where you hear all the time. It's like, well, yeah, well, the Xbox One, it almost outsold the NES. You know, it got pretty close to the NES, which I mean, it's still like 10 million away. But I'm like, yes, but the NES came out in 1985 and the Xbox One came out in 2014. You know what I mean? The hobby got much larger over those 30 years. So if your thing's not selling as well, that isn't good. You know, like, or nowadays, the Switch 2 or sorry, the Switch, it's not able to beat the PS2. I'm like, that's not good. I mean, sure, it's in a good spot relative to everybody else in the industry, and surely there's reasons why it doesn't sell as well as the PS2. But at the end of the day, it probably still should outsell the PS2. The hobby's gotten larger. So, it's definitely a bit of a problem, and it's much more of a problem for, say, Xbox than it is for Nintendo. And so, Xbox, nobody's buying their stuff, nobody's buying their games, nobody's buying their consoles, nobody buys their. I mean, lots of people are still on the subscription, but they're losing subscribers, they're raising the price, and they're taking things off of it. So, I think it's just one of those things like Xbox, are they doomed? I don't know. Is there going to be an Xbox Prime, like a new Xbox console? Probably. But will there be one after that? I don't know. I mean, I think the next Xbox quite possibly could be the last Xbox. Um, unless they make a handheld or something, you know. But like Xbox, could they go third party? I mean, it's possible, right? Or could they sell off some of their brands and some of their studios and stuff? I mean, it seems pretty likely. So I don't know. Or at the very least, they'll close some people down. The last thing we need is like them closing Bethesda or something crazy, right? I mean, that's not what we want. It's not good for the industry for one company to buy up all those studios, and then it's even worse when that one company starts failing. So yeah, it's definitely not a great situation. I have an idea. Maybe Atari will buy Xbox like they bought Intellivision, and then we'll have the A box instead of the Xbox. Um, it'll be all wood grain and stuff. Because obviously Atari makes the best business decisions. Obviously, they've always been known for making good business decisions. Anyways, I'm kidding, but yeah, the Xbox, it's in a rough spot. It's in a rough spot. Personally, I have a Series X. I've had lots of technical problems with the Series X, the disk drive not working or it not being able to connect to internet or just, it's one thing after another. It seems like every time I boot that thing up, which isn't much anymore, every time I boot it up though, there's like some new problem with it. My controller won't pair or the internet won't connect or the disk drive won't open. And usually those things do get fixed, but there's never any good reason as to why they got fixed. You just have to like restart a few times. You've just got to like sit around for an hour and hope that eventually it starts working. Or, in the disk drive, you just got to try to open it 100 times until it works on the 100th one. Like it's never like there's any real solution to these things. Just you got to hope that it starts working again. And I never know why it broke. I don't know if it broke because of some update or it broke just out of random happenstance or what. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't like had permanent damage, but it's had problems software wise, or I guess really it's hardware wise over the years. Whereas the PS5, although I've had it for less time, the PS5 has not had any such issues. Like honestly, I can't think of any issues I've had with the PS5. I mean, it's worked pretty flawlessly. In the Switch, I've had pretty minimal issues with the Switch. I've had the Xbox for a little over a year. I've had the PS5 for a few months. And I've had my Switch for oh gosh, like 7. I mean, we're going on an 8th year here. I mean, I've had it since not long after it came out. And I have had some problems with the Switch. Obviously, I had the Joy-Con drift problems, right? And I had the finally just last year I had my dock break. The USB ports on the dock broke. So I went 7 years or whatever. And I think to go 7 years with the only problem being the controller, right? That's not even the console itself. It's still not good, but for the console itself to be in fine working order for 7 years until it finally has its first problem, which is a pretty simple. I mean, it's like it's like $40 to buy a new dock. It's not that big a deal. It's not nearly as bad as replacing an entire console or anything, right? Like you had to do with the 360s. I think that's pretty crazy. For me to have played probably a couple thousand hours over the course of 7 years. I got the thing when I was very young. Probably wasn't taking the best care of it, and it still worked. The Switch still worked for like 8 years now. I think that is much better build quality than the Xbox, which I've had for a year, that's already had several different issues and feels like it's on its last leg after just a year of very light use. I think I've played the thing like 20 hours maybe. I mean, it's crazy. So, I'm just not happy with Xbox. I'm probably never going to buy an Xbox again, which is fine because, like I said, I'm not convinced there's going to be more than one more. I think there will be one more, and I think it'll come out in 2026, and that'll be the last one. That'll be it, I think. I'm pretty sure. But who knows? I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Whereas, there obviously will be a PS6. I think there will also be a PS7, and there likely will be a PS8, Maybe they'll stop eventually and just go the PC route, it's possible. The mobile route, maybe, But I think that won't happen for another 20, 30 years unless PlayStation gets in some real trouble. Um, it is a interesting thing to hypothesize though, like what would happen in the event that Xbox goes away? Like if all of a sudden Microsoft came out and they're like, look, we're selling off the Xbox brand with all its associated IPs and the studios, and we're selling it to Nintendo. No, I don't think Nintendo would buy it. I don't think they'd want it. But I think if Xbox was really going to sell stuff off, I think they would probably not sell everything to the same place. They would either sell entirely to Sony, is my guess, or maybe even Ubisoft, or it would be like a little bit of a draft. Capcom gets this, Bandai Namco gets this, Koei Tecmo gets this, Sony gets the actual brand. I don't know. I mean, I could see Ubisoft, EA, all these places get in there. I could see something like that where it kind of gets split up. Bethesda, Activision, Blizzard, all these places go separate ways. Or I could see them just selling to Sony. I don't think anybody else is quite big enough to buy all of the Xbox stuff. I mean, obviously even Sony probably isn't big enough to buy all of Xbox and its associated brands, and the other studios and stuff. They're probably not big enough to do that. But I think if Microsoft really wanted an out from the gaming industry, they would sell cheap enough for Sony to do it. So if anybody was going to buy Xbox, it would probably be Sony. Nintendo, I'm not convinced Nintendo could buy all that stuff, and if they could, I don't think they could manage it, and I don't think they would want to anyways. I don't think they would bother. Like, if they were offered for something they could reasonably afford, I don't think they'd take it up, because they wouldn't want to deal with that, I would guess. But who knows? Maybe they'd buy, like, a smaller studio or something. I don't think they'd buy the whole thing. So, but, I'm not saying Xbox is going away. If it is, it might not be for another 10 years or so. So it's not like this is all going to be something we have to worry about soon. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the next Xbox, if you're watching this. I'm just saying I'm not going to myself. Unless I guess I'm in some position where I'm like super important in the game industry and I'm like reviewing stuff. In that case, maybe, even still, I think I'd rather play that stuff on PC since it's on PC day one, anyways. So I'm not like trying to avoid Microsoft completely. Like I'm not gonna not buy like if Halo or Forza comes to these other platforms, I might buy them there, and not buy them on Xbox because I'm not like, boycotting Microsoft. I just don't want to have to deal with another Xbox falling apart. I've had 360s, they're not in good condition, and you get a 360 and like the disk drive doesn't open and the USB slots are falling off, and it's like a whole thing. I mean, there's always a problem with the 360s. I haven't had an Xbox One, but those things were catching on fire when they came out. The original Xbox, I have one of those, and the clock capacitor broke, and now the entire thing's shot because for some reason the entire system relies on the clock capacitor. I mean, it's a whole mess. Every Xbox system I've had problems with, except for the one. I haven't actually had an Xbox One, but I've heard of some big issues with it. So, yeah, not happy with Xbox. I'm actually fairly happy with PlayStation. Historically, I'm less happy with PlayStation than I am Xbox. But in modern times, I'm happier with PlayStation than with Xbox. So that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, Nintendo, I'm always going to prefer Nintendo. But I'll admit, when Sony does something good, or when Microsoft does something good, or when Nintendo does something bad, I'm not like a Nintendo ninja. I'm not like hired by them. There's some things they do that aren't great, but generally, I'm gonna support them when a lot of other people won't. Because I think a lot of people are just quick to blame Nintendo for things that don't make sense. Yeah, I guess I'm a bit of an Xbox hater these days. Other news that I suppose is a bit older, but it's kind of come back up here. I think it's been kind of a big thing since I would say January or so. GTA 6, right? Of course, GTA 6 was revealed. What was it? Just before the Game Awards last year, or maybe I say last year, but I mean like the Game Awards before last. So really, it's been I don't know, like a year and a half almost, right? Since that was unveiled. Am I totally off on my time frame? I don't know. Or maybe it's only been 5 or 6 months. I don't know, but it's been a little while since this thing was unveiled. I'm not somebody who really cares much about GTA 6. I haven't played. Well, I mean, I guess I played like 45 minutes of GTA 5. Maybe it was like an hour. But that's it. I don't even have any other ones. I absolutely do not care about GTA. But there is big news to talk about on GTA, and that's this current rumor slash, honestly, I say it's a rumor, but at the same time, I really do think that this could be Rockstar purposefully releasing stuff, hoping to get like a audience reaction to gauge what they should do. And that's the whole $100 price tag thing, or potential $100 price tag thing. Basically, for those who are unfamiliar, there's a chance, based on insider information and leaks and stuff and rumors, that GTA 6 could launch at $100 for the standard edition. There could even be more editions that some people have said could be as much as $200 for the Ultimate Edition. I don't think there's any shot the Ultimate Edition is $200, if there even is such thing as an Ultimate Edition. But as far as the $100 price tag, that definitely does seem realistic. I was going to say reasonable. It doesn't seem reasonable, but it does seem realistic. Um, Personally, Rockstar, I'm not a fan. I look at Red Dead Redemption. A lot of people love Red Dead Redemption. I'm like, this game does not look fun. You know what I mean? First and foremost, I feel like the game has to be fun. And really, stuff like Red Dead Redemption does not seem like the kind of thing that would be fun. Sure, it's like realistic, but I don't think just because a game is realistic makes it good. In fact, many of my, like basically all of my favorite games are quite unrealistic, and I think it's almost one of those things where you can call something video gamey and it's unrealistic. It's comic booky, it's video gamey, I guess that's really those are the ones, right? And that makes it unrealistic. I'm not saying games have to be unrealistic. There's some great stuff about some realism every now and then. Whether it's graphics, whether it's ideas and stuff. I mean, I played the Insomniac Spider-Man games. I'm like, yeah, these look pretty cool. It's kind of neat seeing like real life city looking so good. But at the same time, that game doesn't get any extra points in my game, or in my head, just because it looks realistic. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, the reason I love those games, the story's nice. Again, I don't need story in my games, but really the biggest reason I like those games is because I like Spider-Man, and I love the gameplay. I love the mechanics, the combat, especially the movement, right? And with Spider-Man, one of the biggest hooks, probably the biggest hook, is the swinging around New York City. It feels so great. It's fantastic, right? And so that's why I love the Insomniac Spider-Man games. Something like Rockstar's games, specifically like Red Dead Redemption, doesn't seem to have like, at least from an outsider perspective, from someone who hasn't played it, it doesn't seem like it has any of that same loop. It seems like you're just kind of wandering around, wasting time. And sure, there's like a story and stuff, but it really seems like it's overly it's overly realistic, to the point where it would drag the game down and make it less fun. Gran Turismo. So I'm like, I cannot. I'm losing it today. Grand Theft Auto. My problem with Grand Theft Auto is I started up with the story and I just wasn't feeling it at all. It really seems just like they're trying to be so like mature to a point where it's almost immature, if that makes sense. They think they're I don't know, you're just going around shooting cops. I don't like the idea. It's one of those things where you have a lot of the it's been a thing for years, right? You've got those Karens and those soccer moms that are like, oh, video games are making my kids violent. They're gonna make my kids want to go kill people. And obviously that's not true. And it's obviously not even true necessarily from Grand Theft Auto, but
it definitely doesn't make everything else look good when there are games like Grand Theft Auto that are so blatantly horrible. Honestly, there's horrible things happen in that game. And that's okay. Those games can exist, but it doesn't mean that I'll like them. It means that I'll not like them because they definitely give everything else a bit of a bad reputation. And also, I look at the game, and from the little bit I played, I didn't like the mechanics. Like, controlling the game felt horrible. I did do a little bit of, like, I did have a fun thing. Get in a car, don't do the story or anything. Get in a car and just, like, run somebody over. I know it sounds bad, right? You just run somebody over so you get like a police star, and then you just drive around and see how long you can like evade the police. And I say that now, and it sounds like a horrible thing to be doing, even in a video game. I'm like, man, I wouldn't want to do that in real life, right? But at the same time, I can admit that it is kind of fun in a way, right? But the story doesn't seem fun. The online stuff, that doesn't, and none of that seems at all appealing to me. So personally, I really don't care much about GTA. But GTA 6, of course, it is like earth-shattering news for lots of people. So to hear about this, it's crazy stuff. But really, what I wanted to talk about was this $100 price tag, possibly even more, depending on editions and stuff. It's a whole thing, right? I mean, of course, you've got Ubisoft out here putting out Star Wars Outlaws. There was a Galactic Edition. Galactic, is that what they called it? Galactic Edition? And what was the Galactic Edition for Star Wars Outlaws? How much did that cost? I know it was like something absurd. I'm looking it up right now, actually. Oh, the Ultimate Edition. Sorry, the Ultimate Edition to $130. That is like literally absurd. I mean, like I just can't imagine like $130 for like some extra stuff. Like it's insane. That's insane. And of course, nowadays you can buy the standard edition of Star Wars Outlaws, which is a very new game for like $30, $40 because Ubisoft games just plummet in value almost immediately, and it's probably because they put them out for too much money to begin with. Um, but anyways, and so we see games like Star Wars Outlaws, and now especially we're seeing GTA 6, or we're possibly seeing GTA 6 soon. I think it was supposed to come out this year. If this game is really going to come out at $100, or if it's going to come out at 120, or if it's going to come out at 150, it doesn't matter, right? Anything over the standard price point, that's not good. Okay. First of all, there's the GTA people, those people that are fans of the game. They don't want to pay $100. Okay, whatever, right? But I think the bigger deal here is that if GTA 6, one of the biggest games, it's going to be one of the biggest games of the decade, right? It's going to be one of the best selling. It's going to be one of the best, performing, best reviewed, like some of the most, players of any game that comes out this decade, that's came out or that will come out for the rest of the decade. I mean, who knows? I don't want to push it to like the next 30 years or anything, but I could see it being a pretty big deal, right? I mean, every GTA that comes out, like GTA 5 is like really high up on the list of most bought games. I mean, I think it's like seventh, sixth or seventh or something. I mean, it's very high up there, right? Um, and so for GTA 6 to come out at $100, it's going to be a big thing in the industry. If GTA 6 is $100, then that means everybody else knows they can get away with putting their games out for $100 because we've had this bit of a standard price point for a long time now. It was $60 at one point, and then everybody but Nintendo moved to 70. And of course, Nintendo did do the Tears of the Kingdom, which was $70, right? But every other Nintendo game has been 60 or less. 60 has been the standard price point, and everybody else has been basically at 70. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not gonna, be like, oh my gosh, look at this, Nintendo, praise them like some idol because they've stayed at 60 and everybody else has done 70. There's certainly things that they haven't been good with on pricing, especially their remakes and stuff that are maybe a little too overpriced. But it is good that the Nintendo games are 60 and everybody else is 70, right? I mean, we can't sit here and say that that's not, like, good on Nintendo, right? I don't know. I'm not trying to give them credit here. But what I'm saying is that the $70 price point, everybody's used to it. I think $70 is reasonable for big AAA games. If you don't want to pay the $70, then don't buy them day one, right? Or don't even buy them anytime too soon. But at the end of the day, if this game comes out at $70 and 8 months later it's like half price, or sometimes it's like $40, right? Not quite half price, but close enough. It's like $40, right? If a game is $100, now 8 months later it'll be 55, or it'll be 60, or it'll be even 50 is like the lowest, right? And so regardless of how long you wait to buy the games are going to get more expensive. And we were at $60, we've jumped up to 70, but it was over the course of many, many years. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that, like, we got 60, boom, then 70, and then boom, 80, 90, 100. Like, all in the course of like a year, right? Like these have been very gradual increases. PlayStation and Xbox, they had that $60 price point, like PS4 all the way through that generation, and then it was the new generation where they're like, hey, look, games are $70 now. And Nintendo's kept 60 for a good while now. So I think, you know, to have such a dramatic increase, right? Because I really do think whatever GTA 6 is priced at could very well be the new standard for games. If it comes out at $80, I think that's going to push everybody else to be $80. Maybe not Nintendo, maybe they'll be 70. But most other brands are probably going to come out at $80. If they're $90, everything's probably going to come out at $90. Maybe 80, right? But probably $90. If it comes out at $100, lots of things are going to be $100. Maybe 90, right? And if it comes out at 120, maybe that's the point where everything else still comes out at like 100, right? But either way, things are obviously going to get more expensive, and they're obviously going to get more expensive by a factor of which we've never seen. And I don't think that's good for us to be paying $70 for games in 2024, and then all of a sudden $100 for games in 2025. That's $30 a year. So then what? GTA 7 comes out, and by then we've gone up another $100, and games are like $200. I mean, like, things are going to get out of hand, right? And I mean, sure, the money is worth less. There's inflation. I don't want to get into all that stuff, but it's not this much of a gap, and it's not this sudden. You know what I mean? So clearly, there's a problem here, and I think GTA 6. It would be incredibly irresponsible. Rockstar, it's not like they're struggling. You know what I mean? Like they're okay, right? And I understand that this is a big game for them. They put a lot of resources into this. It's really not going to be a good thing. It's going to be really detrimental to the industry and possibly even to the sales of GTA 6. I'm not going to sit here and say GTA 6 isn't going to sell well, but certainly there are going to be some less people that will want to buy the game if it's 100 versus 70. Or maybe they'll want it, but they won't actually go through with it. So it might hurt the game a little bit. Overall, I think they probably will make more money, which is the unfortunate thing, is that there is an incentive for them to hike the price up. But I think in the long run, it'll hurt everybody else, and it'll probably come back to bite Rockstar at some point. And it definitely won't do good things for their image. So I think this is really something we don't want. Thankfully, I'm on the Nintendo side of things. I play the other stuff, I buy the other stuff, right? But Nintendo's my home, right? So at the end of the day, I don't think Nintendo games are going to suddenly cost $100. But, I could see 70. If GTA 6 is $100, I could see even Nintendo being like, well, we can scrape 80, right? And I don't want to be paying $80. I definitely don't want to be paying $100 for games. So yes, surely the prices will come down. GTA 6 will come out at 100, and then in a year it'll be $80, and in 5 years it'll probably be like 40, right? Or maybe it'll be even 30, right? So I'm not like saying that this is like games aren't going to be like completely unachievable, but I do think if every game goes up by $30, people will buy less games, they'll play less games, and the industry will go down in value. This isn't going to be good for the industry. This is absolutely going to be detrimental. So I know everybody has had their opinions on this. I think basically everybody, and I'm glad to see, right? Because oftentimes you'll see like people that are really big fans of GTA and Red Dead Redemption and stuff, and they'll support Rockstar blindly. They'll be like, "Look, it was worth $100, right? It's a big game, it's long, whatever." Thankfully, basically everybody has unanimously agreed that this will be a bad thing for the industry. So thankfully, I'm not alone here, and nobody else is alone here. We all agree this is not going to be good, except for apparently the people at Rockstar, because they think they can make that extra quick buck. And to be honest, they probably can, and that's the problem here. Really, that's the root of the problem. If they didn't think they could make the money, they wouldn't make the decision, and then it won't happen. And maybe I'm just getting a little overly zealous here. This isn't like confirmed stuff, but I do think that most likely this is Rockstar releasing this information in the form of a leak, right? Like they did this intentionally to gauge audience reception, is my guess, right? And they're kind of trying to see, like, okay, how bad would it be if we put a game out at $100, right? And they did say the thing. I think this might have been like a year or even a little bit more ago. Rockstar, like the CEO of Rockstar, was like, hey, we should price games based on the length of time they take to beat, right? And I could understand him saying we should, base the price of games on quality, right? And of course, quality, I mean, it's very subjective, right? But as far as like so quality, right? Maybe if Nintendo, and Nintendo is somebody we can criticize here on the quality, right? Nintendo's strategy. And obviously, I'm not Furukawa. I'm not trying to be armchair CEOing, right? But Nintendo's strategy seems to be with their remakes and stuff that they'll put out a remake for the same cost, sometimes like 10 less, but it's basically the same cost, right? As a new game. And they do this presumably, this is my guess, and this is most other people's guess, to kind of make it seem that all their games are valuable, right? Nintendo doesn't want to be transparent in the fact that they literally put less time and less resources into certain things. And on some level, you could be like, well, that's a little, they're being a little sneaky, right? They're trying to make us think that Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, 3D, Switch, NSW, 4K, 8K, 9000p, whatever it is, right? I mean, who knows? Because we'll probably have that game remade again. They're trying to make us think that Donkey Kong Country Returns for the seventh time is just as valuable as, well, I shouldn't say Tears of the Kingdom, but like Echoes of Wisdom, right? For instance. And obviously that's not true. You look at Donkey Kong Country Returns HD or HD or something. You look at that game, you look at Brothership or Echoes of Wisdom, clearly they're not worth the same amount of money, right? However, neither is MLB The Show and Star Wars Outlaws, right? Or maybe not Star Wars Outlaws is not the best example, but like, something like, I don't know, God of War Ragnarok, right? Not everything is going to be worth the same amount of money. And certainly we should expect more fluctuation within one company, right? So with Nintendo, it probably is reasonable to expect them to put out games like remakes and stuff at $30 or $40, and then like the newer games at 60 or even 70, right? And I think most people would be totally fine if Donkey Kong Country Returns was only $40 or $30 if they did decide to put some Zelda games up to 70, right? I don't think anybody would complain too much, and if they did, they'd be stupid. So yes, certainly we can complain about Nintendo and we can criticize Nintendo for their pricing. We could do the same for many other companies as well. This isn't unique to Nintendo. People like to bring Nintendo up as the main culprit. I don't know that they're the main culprit. They're definitely a culprit, right? Nobody's like not a culprit here. And it's definitely not Nintendo. There are, there's just one of the things they definitely aren't the best at. And I'm willing to have a strategy. This is for everybody, not just Nintendo. Where, possibly, I'll give Nintendo examples because I'm a Nintendo guy. Possibly the next 30 Zelda game is $80, but then the next, when Donkey Kong Country Returns gets remade again in 4K, it's only 40, right? Like I am willing to live in a world like that, or maybe GTA 6 is $100, but then, Star Wars Outlaws is 80, and I don't know, Zelda's 80, and Mario's 60, and I'm not trying to like pick my favorites here, but you know what I mean. Things go down in price, and then you've got like these tiny little 2-hour indie games, there's a lot of love put into them, but at the end of the day, they're like $30 or something. And to be fair, that's actually more expensive than some of them are. So I think that's not necessarily too much of a sacrifice. However, I don't think it can be based off length, and that's what Rockstar, or the CEO, I should say. Like, I mean, I can't say he doesn't speak for the company. He's literally the CEO. But at the same time, it does kind of feel a little weird to be like, Rockstar said it when really it was like the one guy. He wasn't saying it at a press conference or anything. He was literally just saying it in an interview. But like at the same time, he does speak for the company. And so, when he said, they should be based on the length of the games, and that's ridiculous because then you are screwing over the indies, right? Because now the indie games. I mean, if GTA 6, if the main story is, I don't know, what's the main story of GTA 5? Like how long? I'm gonna look it up. Okay, GTA 5 is 32 hours. GTA 6 is going to be a lot more expensive, supposedly. So even if we assume GTA 6 is like a 50-hour story, right? 50-hour story. If 50-hour story is $100, right? That means a game like Behind the Frame, The Finest Scenery, something like that, right? Suddenly that game can only come out for $2, right? I mean, that seems crazy, right? Or Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is a 23-hour game, right? And I think, or sorry, a $23 game, and I think a lot more people would be happy about that, to be fair. But then you got things like Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring would have to be a $120 game, right? Because it's 60 hours. Baldur's Gate 3, it'd have to be $142, right? You've got, let's put like Persona 5 Royal, right? It's like a 105-hour game. Persona 5 Royal, based on the same metric, would have to be $202. And the last thing we need is Behind the Frame, the Finest Scenery to be worth $2 and Persona 5 Royal to be $200, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. $2 versus 200. I mean, it's absurd, honestly. So we do not need a situation like that. So we don't want, at least I don't want, and I would like to think that most people don't want games based on price alone. Um, or not, sorry, not price, playtime alone, right? The price of games based on playtime. So if we're gonna have any sort of system here that we have not a standard price for games, then I think it needs to be, based on the amount of resources and stuff they put into it. So, maybe Nintendo, their Marios and their Zeldas maybe they go up a little bit. Maybe they're up to like 80, right? But then their remakes need to be down to like 30 or 40, even 50 if it's like Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, right? Clearly more impressive, or Metroid Prime Remastered, clearly more impressive a remaster than, say, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, or I'll bring it up again, right? Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, right? Clearly, two of those things are much better in quality than the other two, right? It's not like any secret, like they're not trying to hide it, or maybe they are trying to hide it, right? It's hard to say. Um, and so this isn't just a Nintendo issue, this is an everybody issue. But I don't think we can also sit here and say, like, Behind the Frame, the finest scenery isn't worthy of being expensive, right? So maybe it can stay at that $15 price range, right? Or something like $20, right? However, I don't think Behind the Frame can be $70, right? If Mario is out $70, because they literally did not put as many resources in. Now, yes, they had less resources to spare, so it's kind of hard to say, right? Uh, it's a tough call to make, so that's why I think we're probably fine with the current pricing strategy we have, where everything is standard. The problem that happens when everything is standardized like that is GTA 6 comes out at $100 and now everybody has to be $100. So there's problems no matter which way you do it. But I do think that pricing games based on playtime is absolutely the worst way to price games of those three options. So that is not a good move, and I think that's not even a good move for Rockstar. Sure, they would be able to put their games higher up, but I think it would damage the industry overall. So I think that was a really poor thing to say on the CEO of Rockstar's behalf. I know this is like a while ago that he said this, but they clearly are doubling down on it, or at least that's what everybody seems to be thinking based off the rumors and stuff. So as far as the GTA 6 situation, do I actually think the game's going to come out at $100? I'm going to guess no. However, I do think that there was a thought in their mind that it could. And I think that that's why I think these rumors were intentionally released. And I think that they were originally maybe going to put it for $100. And now that they're seeing the reactions everybody's having, like me, right? I think they're probably not going to put it out at $100. However, I do think GTA 6 could quite likely be like $80. I think they'll try to push it a little bit, but maybe they won't go quite to 100 because that seems like not the best idea, especially considering the reactions they've been getting. So I could see a few scenarios there. So yes, if there's any sort of big price change in pricing strategy across the industry, I think that's acceptable as long as it's not the one Rockstar Games proposed, because that's a terrible idea, and I don't even think I need to explain any further why that's a terrible idea. That's just clearly not a good idea. We don't need Persona being $200 and I don't know, and a little indie game being $5, right? I mean, that's not what we want, right? The indie game at $5 is fine. Persona at 200 is not fine, not by any means. And sure, GTA 6 will be a long thing, but there's things longer than GTA 6. So did those things come out at more than $100? That seems crazy. So I don't know. Hard to say. I guess if Rockstar wants to base just their games off playtime, I suppose they're allowed to do it, right? Like, but it does seem a little bit tough because then what do you base it off, right? Is GTA 6 $100? So then any game that's longer, like, is GTA 6 the metric or is something else the metric? Like, it's hard to measure that, And if Red Dead Redemption 3 or something comes out and the story is only half the length of GTA 6, does that mean Red Dead Redemption 3 only comes out at $50? I mean, that seems crazy, right? Surely they'd put it more than that. So, I don't know. I don't think Rockstar they're clearly not very smart. Because I do think if they end up going through with this, it will come back to bite them. But I just figured I should share my thoughts on that because I have a pretty strong opinion, as I'm sure many of you could tell, on this little situation we've had here. I guess on the topic of price, I mean, I've talked about it some before, but we've got the Switch 2 coming out very soon. Well, I mean, yeah, very soon. I mean, we've got the presentation coming up in like just over a week, or actually just a week. We have the presentation coming up because I'm recording this part of this podcast on Tuesday. Um, but yes, we've got the presentation coming up, and we've got the Switch 2, and that'll be coming out soon. And we'll know the price of the Switch 2 at the presentation. But I just want to share kind of some final thoughts on it. And of course, this is kind of related to the GTA 6 thing, right? The Switch 2, I I'm still leaning on the $400 price point. I think the $400 price point is a pretty good point because it gets them below the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And those consoles might get a price cut at the end of the generation. They might get down to 400. If so, it would probably have to happen pretty soon, maybe after this holiday or something. I could see them getting cut a little bit, but I think the Switch 2 coming out at that is reasonable, especially if the thing is as powerful as many of the rumors and many of the leaks and stuff have suggested. Now, of course, I'm not somebody who necessarily cares about power and stuff. At the end of the day, I just want the Nintendo games to run and work better. But if the third party stuff also works better, that's great. I mean, maybe I'll actually end up playing some of the third party stuff on the Switch or Switch 2 instead of playing it on like PS5. I mean, if there's no reason for me to have those other consoles, then great, right? I might still have some of them just, for the sake of it. But really, at the end of the day, if Nintendo can offer me everything I need, then I'm just going to go with them because they're my favorite by far. So, as far as the price point, I think $400 is great. $500, if they want to do $500 because of rising costs and things, I could see $500. I'm not like necessarily happy about $500. I do think it's a little much. And at the end of the day, it is a little much because I don't want to pay $500, but it's also a little much because I think that's, well, I'm not even, I think, for sure, that is the same price point as like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And I don't think they should price it at the same price point because Nintendo's always the cheap thing, right? That's like half the reason. Well, maybe it's not half the reason. It's a pretty large part of the reason why they do sell so much, right? They're usually cheap. They play Nintendo games. Nintendo games are always desirable because everybody knows they're pretty good games, right? They're good games. You can get the consoles for cheap. And Nintendo's recognizable. It's a recognizable brand. So really, and also they usually do something weird and wacky, and everybody's got to try it out, right? It's like some new crazy concept. So there's a few reasons why Nintendo consoles sell, but one of those reasons is because of price, because they manage they don't waste all this extra cost on putting in this extraneous power, because at the end of the day, a lot of the consumers don't really care that much, right? And so that's why Nintendo consoles sell sometimes. Obviously, there's exceptions, right? There's the Wii U. But I do think that Nintendo's pretty smart in that, and I think for them to put out a console at $500 would not be smart. And the same goes for 450. Obviously, 450 is still less than the $500 price point of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, but 450, I think that's still too close to those other two consoles. Because obviously, I'm not saying the Nintendo console wouldn't sell at 500. It probably would be fine, right? They could get away with it because they'll still have the Nintendo people, and the regular person will be like, okay, do I want to play Nintendo games or do I want to have something really powerful? And I think a lot of people will have the Nintendo games or they'll have the handheld thing, whatever it is. There'll be other draws, right? But they're definitely going to lose out on some sales if the thing is too expensive. So I think $400 is a good price point. $500 is the absolute maximum. They cannot go over $500 because we cannot have this thing costing more than the PS5 and this Xbox Series X. That would be insane. Um, I guess the only saving grace there, if they do go over $500, is because the PS6 and the Xbox, I'm just going to call it Prime because that's the rumor. When those come out, I guess the saving grace would be that those would be more expensive again, so the Switch 2 would only be the most expensive thing for a couple years. But I still think that's too long for it to be the most expensive thing. I think the Switch 2 has to be 400 or less, at least 500 or less, right? Um, Now, on the other side of the spectrum, I don't think they should go under 500 or under 400. Sorry, I don't think they should go for 350 because 350 might even be a little cheap. Um, if this thing really is as powerful as they say, and I want Nintendo to do well, I don't think they should put it out for 350 because they could probably get 400 and not lose any sales. So I think 400 is the best price point. 350, it's okay, right? Obviously, I'll take it, right? But I think it's not the best idea for Nintendo. 450 is maybe a little too close to the PS5, Xbox Series X. So I do think 400 is the absolute sweet spot as far as pricing for the Switch 2. And as far as pricing in general for consoles, we're seeing everything go up. Obviously, it's no secret, right? I mean, everything's going up for everything. Everything's always going up, but it's going up a lot right now. The PS5 being $500. I think that was a little bit of a shock for some people. I don't know if it was really a shock. I guess it was a little surprising for some people because everything had been $400 for quite a long time, right? Or $300 and then $400, and they got up to 500. And I guess that was kind of reasonable, right? They were kind of going up ish by $100 a generation, right? At least PlayStation and Xbox were. Um, but then I think what really set everybody off and what really shocked everybody was when the PS5 Pro was announced for like 700. Is it 700? Yeah, $700. I think that's what really set everybody off was when the PS5 Pro was $700 because it's a mid-generation refresh. And historically, the mid-generation refreshes have been an increase of like $50. I think maybe 100 is like it's really pushing it, but maybe, right? Um, but for them to increase $200 in the middle of a generation is insane because presumably they're also going to increase for the PS8 or PS8, sorry, PS6. Yeah, we're not on PS8 just yet. I'm jumping the gun by like 15 years. But yes, presumably they're going to in price increase for the PS6. So if it's $100 again, then that means the PS6 is $800, where the PS5 was only $500, which is way more than they've done in the past. And if they go up $100 more than they had gone up before, well, even if they go up by the same amount as they've gone up from PS5 to PS5 Pro, that means the PS6 will be $900, right? We're pushing a grand at that point. Um, so maybe they pull it down to 800, right? Maybe it's up to 900. And if they want to increase by more than they increased last time, then the PS6 could quite possibly, even realistically, come out at $1,000. So for us to go from $400 consoles, 6 years later, $500 consoles, and then 6 years after that, $1,000 consoles, that's insane, and that's obviously not sustainable because in theory, then you would expect $1,500 or even $2,000 another 6 years later. So the last thing we need is 18 years where we go from spending $400 to $2,000. It's crazy, right? So obviously, I don't want, and I'm assuming probably just about nobody wants the PS6 to be $1,000 or even $800. Honestly, the PS6, the best price point for the PS6 would probably be $600, maybe $700 at most. But the problem is they've kind of dug themselves a hole here by having this PS5 Pro so expensive. So I think console pricing is in a bit of a strange position because we don't know for sure what the best pricing strategy for Nintendo is. And I think most of us would agree that it's good for PlayStation to not be quite as high as they might end up going, but I'm not sure that that's actually what they're going to end up doing. So I could see a situation here pretty soon, like just a couple of years from now when the PS6 comes out, where it's $1,000 and the Nintendo thing is 400, which again is crazy. And it would definitely afford Nintendo the ability to put out an OLED version or something, or a Pro version, and make it $500 and not price cut the original model. Like, Nintendo wouldn't have to price cut the original model at that point, because, even the Pro model for the Switch 2 would still be half the cost of the PS6. I mean, that's crazy, right? So I think, honestly, the more Sony screws up by raising the cost of the PlayStation, and the more Nintendo gets it right by not increasing the cost of the Switch 2 by too much, the better Nintendo's going to do. Obviously, them making good decisions is good for them, but PlayStation making bad decisions is also good for them. So, I think this is going to be a good situation for Nintendo overall, but it's probably not a good situation for the general consumer, especially if the PlayStation goes up by as much as it very well could go up. I mean, obviously the PS6 can't be 500, right? So it obviously has to be either 600 or 700 or 800 or 900 or 1,000. I mean, like, really, we're in such a weird point where it could be as low as 600 and as much as 1,000. And presumably, the Xbox would probably match that price. Maybe they'd go 100 less, 50 less, maybe even 100 more. I don't know. It just depends on the situation, I'm sure. But you would think they would be roughly close to that price. If this PS6 is 1,000, maybe they'll try to cut down to 900. But honestly, $1,000 is a price point at which they would probably just stay. If the PS6 was 1,000, the Xbox would probably also be 1,000. But if the PS6 was 900, then the Xbox might only be 800. I think that's my theory. Of course, I'm not like an expert. I'm not a leaker. I'm not an insider. I'm none of this stuff. I'm just a guy who likes to talk about video games. And I talk about video games an awful lot, as it turns out. Um, so I think I might cut this episode a little bit short here. I don't have a whole lot to talk about. I haven't had a whole lot to talk about in a few weeks, to be honest. And that's, honestly, it's because I haven't been playing as many video games because I've been making myself busy with filing my game collection and all that stuff. I think I talked about that earlier. But also, I'm just hyped for Switch 2, and I want to talk about Switch 2, and I can't do that until next week. So, I will see you all next week on Thursday, not on Wednesday, on Thursday. So it'll be April 3rd that I'll make my next podcast episode, and I'm sure I'm gonna have people asking me on Wednesday, April 2nd, like, oh my gosh, where's the podcast episode? Where's the podcast episode? We need Switch 2 coverage. And I'll be like, it's coming out tomorrow. That's what I said. You should have listened. You should have listened. Uh, so, anyways, yes, podcast episode next Thursday, not Wednesday. And then, as far as I know, we'll be right back to the regular schedule. So the next podcast episode will come out in 8 days, and then the one after that will only be 6 days after. So there'll be like a little bit of a quicker turnaround on episode 8, but a slower one on episode 7. So yes, I know this episode is a little bit short. I guess I can real quickly plug some things. I mentioned the email earlier. Email the show with any questions, any comments, anything at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That's all one word, no spaces, no nothing. And if you're on YouTube, you can just comment instead of emailing. If you're on Spotify, you can just comment instead of emailing. Otherwise, I guess you have to email because, that's all I've got set up, right? Those are the only platforms that have the comment sections, as far as I know. So do all that stuff, and I guess you can follow the show on Blue Sky and on Twitter. The handles and stuff are in the description. I haven't really been using that. I probably should, but I haven't been. You can also follow my personal account for Blue Sky down in the description. Again, I haven't been using that, but I probably should. And then the cool thing in the description is the Discord server. I think I might have mentioned that earlier. There is a Discord server. It's specifically for my YouTube, but the YouTube and the podcast and all that stuff, obviously, it's all related. So I don't want to make a whole separate one because it didn't really seem necessary, right? So join the Discord server. We don't have very many people over there, but we have a few people over there that like to be chatty. So it'll be you'll be fun people to talk to, and you'll have good conversations, and we can have some good fun conversations over there. So join the Discord. I guess I should quit yapping, and I should let you all go. I will see you all next Thursday for episode 7 and for the Switch 2 presentation coverage. This is so exciting. I can't explain. Like, I've been waiting for a good while here. I mean, everybody has, right? But I've been waiting for the Switch 2 presentation, and it's finally about here. 7 days. 7 days. I'll see you Thursday. Not tomorrow, but next Thursday. See you guys.